drink from cans. There's been times I even drank from my hands. I love that beer. If I had 3 wishes, the first one would be same as wishes 2 and 3. I'd wish for beer. If I had a chance to live my life again, I know just what I'd do. I'd be burning up those highways each day in a rig full of my favorite brew. I like coffee, I like tea. The thing that really does it for me is beer. Yes, I love it. I love that beer. I'm blue for you, oh so blue for you. Hold you in my arms, that's what I wanna do to you. I've been missing you, I should be kissing you. Hold you in my arms.
Titanium bell housing.
That's what I wanna do. I know it's late, but I can't wait. Hold you in my arms. I can see your smile everywhere I go. Should be holding you. It's all I know. I end every day as I start each day. Hold your picture near. So much I need to see. I know it's late, but I can't wait. Hold you in my arms. I'm blue for you, oh so blue for you. Hold you in my arms, that's what I wanna do to you.
Don't give it to me. For those of you, Jim, he would have wanted it to end that way.
Well, I've been walking down these roads all my life, it seems. Trapping liquid slumber, fast it off the drain. I was halfway through remembering when there wasn't screen.
Yeah, make sure it's okay. You're on. You're live.
Across the great divide. Guilty just some pleasures and I'm turned around the edges, end up all alone. Some things you just give up, some things you just condone. Across the great divide. Reflections in your eyes, I'm standing by myself.
Just the way it was right there.
No more the thin disguise or the lies I've left. We both sit all alone, just pictures on the shelf. Across the great divide. Across the great divide. Across the great divide.
It has been said one dies first a physical death, and then when the last exhaust note is heard.
You see my car? Yeah, where that parking room kind of out of the way. Well, I parked it.
Jim would go, give me one of those. I'll take one of those next. He's going home.
Jim is home, and his ashes will be spread from the bridge his grandfather built. Great grandfather. I stand corrected.
So if anybody wants to visit Jim, and then I'm going to put the second one on. That's not on YouTube. That's a private one, but we're private, right?
And for those of y'all who don't know, where's Kirk?
Over here.
Kirk exemplifies what a friend should be. And I just want to give credit to him for everything he did to help make Jim's life and our lives better by bringing him even when Jim couldn't get around by himself.
And thank you, Debbie and Elaine, from the bottom of my heart.
Just what we really
And make his last days happy. And many of his days.
We love that guy. We love that guy. He was a big old pain in the neck.
His many
That picture was when he was up there.
Yeah, I love that. I love that about him.
Make the most of what you're given.
I think a pain in the neck makes you happy.
Always take less.
Always up for a challenge.
Exactly. I was gonna say that's me.
You put a smile on someone's face. You'll also find. Tell that
This is just
friend
like you start working on mine.
You got a minute. You got a minute. Start gathering pictures. Start gathering.
can't take back
I just love that
words that leave us stinging. Can't paint a smile that's been erased.
He was a handsome guy.
Yeah, he was. Yeah.
Time heals wounds,
Cleaned up pretty
but
nice, huh?
with
Yeah, he did.
bringing.
No, I love the way that Eugenia's looking at him. You could just double
It
it.
should have been from yesterday.
He was always in his shorts.
Yep. And it didn't matter if it was
Well,
He didn't have his
for any
fluorescent.
big reason.
Yeah, he didn't have
It was nice when he put shorts on over his boxers, because
It was a rarity.
yeah. You could often find him in his boxers.
Yes.
In every life, each road is winding. Sometimes returns you to your door. At times we all need some reminding.
I love love of pictures. You can just tell. I did it.
What we really put in.
So this is real. All right, we're live. We are live. We are live. I am going to keep that going in the background. Turn that. But now everybody can wave. I'm going to give everybody a chance to, well, whatever. Hey YouTube. So we're live at the celebration of Jim, and I don't know what else to say, but I thought we would at least let everybody say something that knew Jim. Oops, somebody help me out. Turn this there. Oh, somebody locked that right there. All right, sorry. You can tell this is live. All right, I'm going to start off so that way anybody can come up here, tell a story. We're also going to read stories from these editors, all his friends that are actually very influential, and the stories of Jim. I think they're more important than what I have to say about it. We turn this down a little bit more. I'm going to tell a story when I met Jim. So I was right here, the phone rings, Jim calls for some timing tape. And I've said this before more than once. If you have to know Jim. So just listen to him, be called timing tape. Yeah, I got timing tape. All right, so a little bit later, he goes, you do? You know what this is? Yeah, do you know what this is? I got it. I said, but you don't, what size harmonic balancer? And it's like a 7-inch, 8-inch, 10-inch. Well, I got them all. I'll be right down. So he comes in, I come around, I go over to the other counter, I grab it, and when I get it, I put it on the counter and I go, you know, this isn't just decorative tape. You know, this is, what do you need timing tape with? And I confess that, you know, when someone comes and they're talking with their speech or hands moving, I'm there, I'm confessing that, you know what, who is this, you know? And I said, what do you need with timing tape? And he starts telling me, there's timing curves. And I'm like, well, damn, you're the real deal. Well, come on, you know, so I walk over here and I put it on the counter and I'm like, so we're talking timing curves, we're somewhere else. And I'm like, damn, you're talking, you know, RPM, and I'm like, you know, and then a lady walks in and it's Jeannie, and I said, I'll be right with you. And she said, no, I'm with him. And I go, well, we met Jeannie first. So we met Jeannie when we opened up the bank account at Randolph Brooks when we first started. And she said, oh, you're in automotive. My husband does automotive stuff, and you know, y'all might get on whatever. So I said, okay. So then I said, so anyway, Jeannie says, I'll go outside, I'll wait. And like anybody else who's ever been here, their wives wait a long time outside or they go next door and eat. right? And everybody says, I'm gonna go in for 2 minutes. Yeah. And 2 hours later, they're coming in a couple times. Can I leave and come back and pick you up? So our first meeting was this timing tape, and we go on, and I, like I said, day one, I said, you're the real deal. And he was. And not knowing how much of the real deal. His articles he's written. But anyway, anybody else want to?
Jim was a different fella. He liked almost everybody he met, but if he didn't like you, he would get real quiet. You wouldn't know he didn't like you. How you knew he liked you is if he flipped you off and smiled at you at the same time, he pretty much had you down and you were a friend for life. There was only a couple people I ever met that Jim met at the same time that he got real quiet and just kind of shied off and backed away from. But those were the people he either didn't care for or they were saying something that didn't match up with what he knew to be true as far as automotive. And then if they kept on him, then he'd finally say something. But Jim was always the guy you could go to with advice for a camshaft selection, a carburetor selection. It didn't matter. He wouldn't look down on you like, well, you don't know what you're talking about. He would just give you the advice and probably a part number to go with it. I mean, he was that good at what he did, and he will be missed for sure.
I remember that Nova Jim had. He got watered in Peoria, Illinois. I flew up there with him to help him drive the car back. The kind of guy Jim was, I sat in the passenger seat for 18 hours. I didn't, he, that fault, no, I got it. So the whole time he drove all the way, wouldn't let anybody help him with anything. And that pretty well said a lot about how Jim was.
I'm gonna say it right here. So anyway, I met anyway.
All right, who's next to?
Yeah, I'm gonna say it. So I met Jim here, like I guess like everybody else did around here. I haven't known Jim for a real long time, so we got to conversing a little on everything automotive, and you know, we just think along the same lines, you know, for a while. So Jim had got these Kragers for his car, and he's concerned somebody's not going to install them right, torque the wheels and this sort of thing. So I said, well, I'll come over to your house and I'll take care of it for you. And he goes, really? I said, well, yeah, no, it's no problem. So I got my floor jack and stuff, and I went over to his house, and so put the right front wheel on there, no problem, got my torque wrench and torqued it down. So I jacked up the right rear, slid his steel wheels off, put the Krager on there. I couldn't get the lug nuts to start. I was going, what is going on here? Well, somebody had put metric lug nut studs on the back of that car, and he went to the moon, because you can't imagine a metric lug nuts, you know, studs, metric studs on the back of an American muscle car. So he had to get different, you know, lug nuts for us to finish that job. So, and then he built the 427, and he was talking about somebody to put it in. I said, I can do that for you. I'll take care of that for you if you want to do that. So anyway, so we got the car to my house, and I pulled the 327 out, and we went from the 427 to also put a manual transmission and converted that, and a few other things along the road. So anyway, we're trying to put the transmission in, and we'll go in. So he had got the wrong bell housing. And I said, well, let's get the right bell housing. Nope, we're going to grind on it. And I said, well, it's your stuff.
The titanium bell.
So anyway, so I ground on it. I ground on it real easy, you know. I said, well, let's do a little time. He got impatient. Get out of the way. Grinding the heck out of that thing. Well, that's your stuff, man. So anyway, all right, so we got that in there. Got the transmission in. And then I got a problem with the driver's side header. It will not fit. I said, Jim, I think we got the wrong header over here. Oh, it's the right header. I said, okay. Well, we obliterated, I think it was number 4.2, because it wouldn't go clear the gearbox. So I tapped on a little bit. I said, well, wait. Oh, eventually he just got the big hammer.
What do you say of engine masters? Haven't you seen that video?
Yeah, they smashed the header.
It doesn't hurt 1 horsepower.
Well, that one too was smashed. So it fit. We got in there and got it going, and pretty much the rest is history. You know, he enjoyed the car a lot, and I enjoyed helping him with it. And I learned a lot on the way. We put those exhaust cutouts on there, and you know, a few other upgrades, and he loved that car. You know, and he had a really good time with it. You know, the short time he had it, and you know, we had a good time. And right when he got rid of the car, or just before he got rid of the car, he found out he had ordered the wrong headers. So he had a friend at Hedman. They sent him the correct header for the driver's side, and it went with the cars.
Is it in the trunk of the car?
Yeah, and I.
What did that car run, you remember?
It ran a 10,
Like 1050 to 125 with drag radials.
just the way it was tuned right there, with just not setting, like you go to the track, you change tires, you do, no, just driven, just a normal drive.
So the guy that bought the car from California, he drove to my house, bought the car in California.
Yeah, I took it to
I
California.
backed it out of the driveway. I said, you want to drive it? He goes, nope, but I'm going to tell you. I'm like, you want to drive it? He goes, I don't need to drive it. I looked at it, heard it.
Well, that.
From California.
Yeah, he had a car just like that when he was a kid, and it even had a dent in that trim around the headlight in the same spot that Jim's car did. And he says that car was meant for him. You know, it was exactly what he was looking for. So anyway.
So Jeff, did you say something yet?
I have.
You need to come up and say something, because I'm going to add a little bit to it while you are walking up. When we had we 4 or 5 of us had a thing, and when we were together, it wasn't like anything else. Jim Ward was here. Political correct was out there in the world. We knew each other's heart. We knew we were guys, we were gearheads, and even when there was some women in it, we would say, we talk the way gearhead guys do, and that's what we do. So what we had is the 504, whatever it was here. Every Friday was somebody's day to get picked on. So if we knew
It's usually
that,
my day.
yeah, as a kid, you know, everybody called you something, but you didn't like to be called that. Every time you walked in, that day, that Friday, oh, you know, turkey or whatever that really set you off. Well, that's what everybody was gonna think. And there wasn't a time that a newcomer would come in to do something, and they thought, oh, this is great, I'm gonna pick on, like family, we can pick on each other.
You can't pick on us.
No, it was us against them. This wasn't an open court, and it was some tough love, but it was fun. We had cigars and a beer, and it was so mine one instant and the next Friday was my turn, or it wasn't the same person. That's another thing, little rules. Is don't get, but it's pretty rough. But when it all left, we all hugged. But the next Friday was somebody else's turn. Next Friday, somebody else's turn. It wasn't just one person. We're not picking on one person. It was just that way. And we didn't know who it was going to be. It was whatever walked in and whatever, oh, you wearing
And
that?
don't be late.
Yeah.
If you were late.
If you were late, that would probably be the one that got picked on. So he wanted to put a 5-speed in his car. So I said, Jim, you want to put a 5-speed in? I said, oh, you want a 5-speed? So you're going to hit a gear. It was tough love amongst friends, and we know that, Jim.
So it was there were so many times we pulled that transmission out, I think 3 or 4 times, and Kirk says, maybe we should just put a zipper on there instead of bolts in the bell housing. We just unzip the transmission and put it back in.
He wanted a manual because this was a man drives a manual. We're talking once again the way that in our group it was we all knew the heart, But anyway, that's the way that we would talk. It'd be a different world, and that's the way it is in a different world. But we would talk that way. And he wanted to he wanted to drive a manual for the last time. He did.
And I rode with him in it, and it was sporty.
And then Jim says he agreed. We're gonna put an automatic in it. Yeah. So Kirk is pulling out the tranny, and Jeff got.
I was there. I bought the bell housing. I didn't know about all the grinding, but. No, just kidding.
Yeah,
I didn't know about the grinding.
No one grinds on a titanium bell housing. I'll let you finish the story.
Well, that's it. What I would say about Jim is, if you hadn't seen him in 6 days, 6 hours, or 6 months, it was like no time had passed. He was like you just finished a conversation, you started up, and he had a huge heart. He asked about my kids every single time. Okay, I got you. And I love that dude a lot. It was just I learned so much just listening. He was an amazing guy, and I miss him a lot. So we had a cigar and a beer for him, and earlier. It's great that you guys all showed up.
And anybody who knows me, I talk a lot, and a lot. Like I said, an hours will go by, and except when Jim was here. Like I said, when Jim's here, when he first started coming in, and he started coming in more and more, I would write notes. I said, hold on, Jim, because we have a pad here. And I would always write notes because it was like, hold on.
So much knowledge.
And then one time Jeannie had called and said, is Jim just there too much, bothering you? I can, he ain't bothering anybody. Like I said, I talk a lot, but when Jim's here, I listen a lot. And that was from the day one. He was just, like I said, he would hold court. He was just, yeah. So.
That's all I have. He was a great guy, and he'd be missed. And I learned a ton from him, and I love missing him. So.
Next, Ward, have you said something? He did. I missed Ward. I missed the first one.
Told about when we went and got the car and he wouldn't let me drive.
Oh, that.
I remember that.
And one thing about really fruitful, blessed of our family, everyone is hands down, not just for Jim, for anybody. Ward, Ray, everyone is just. That's what they do, old-fashioned Garrett's. It didn't matter political, it didn't matter what you ate, what you drank, it didn't matter what kind of beer you had, because that was the thing, is that everybody had different beers. Everybody had a different beer. and
Except when Jack was here. Jack would have anybody's
Jack would have anybody's beer. And it was the Budweiser, right? And that was kind of a thing, it's like, and so it was the jokes of what beer you're drinking. And Corona Premiers, which I don't know, we were going to have Corona Premiers, that was our beer. I'm a Miller Lite person, but I'm a Corona person too, but Corona you can drink one, as opposed to drinking Miller Lite, drink more than one. So that was our thing. We always had Corona Premiers for Jim. Are you gonna? Yes. It's
okay.
time.
one of Jim's friends from way back when, Van Toon, some of y'all might have known Portland, he goes by C. Van Toon, wrote this and asked that we read this for him. I remember the first day I met Jim, way back in 1984. I was working at Popular Hot Rodding magazine. Cam Benty, the editor and still my close friend today, and I went to have lunch with a car guy that Cam had recently met. When we got to the restaurant, Jim wasn't there yet. A few minutes later, we heard tires screech and a loud car speed into the parking lot. Then here came Jim, all 250 pounds of muscle and belly. I swear his forearms were larger than most guys' thighs, barreling through the front door. Before Cam or I had time to say hi, Jim launched into an expletive-laden tirade about someone who had just cut him off in traffic and didn't have the brains God gave a turnip. Cam and I both laughed out loud at that. Then Jim did too, in his soon-to-be familiar hearty belly. That lunch was filled with car stories, boasts, brags, and technical trivia that Jim tested Cam and me on. The contest wasn't even close. Jim knew part numbers, Cam specs, the metallurgy of a GM 12-volt ring and pinion, and even the taste of different motor oils. Yes, the taste of motor oils. As a joke, he would pull out the oil dipstick from an engine and ask if you knew how to accurately determine what brand weight of oil it is. Of course, no one knew how to do that. Jim would then lick the oil off the dipstick, ponder the taste for a moment, and with a straight face, tell you the brand of oil and its weight. With everyone's eyes bulging, Jim would further expound on the oil's lead and sulfate content, detergent additives, and even the location of the refining plant. That's Jim. He had no tolerance for fools or traffic, but he would always patiently answer any tech question, no matter how basic, from a respectful person. You all have heard of Jim's wild exploits with fast cars. Here's some more. I used to say that Jim could make a car do things it was never designed to do. With his big hands, arms, and elbows flailing like he was operating an airplane with no wings, he certainly wasn't smooth, nor easy on machinery. But he could run with damn near anyone on the street or track. In case you doubt that, his nickname was Animal. He called me Tuner. Whenever we magazine staffers would be going somewhere together in more than one car, it was race time, even when going to lunch. One memorable instance was in 1986. We had just finished a day of testing at a drag strip near San Diego. We'd each made multiple turns in the test cars, and our ETs were always very close, despite the differences in our driving styles. As we headed back to the office, it was Jim in a new Corvette, Cam in an IROC Camaro, and me in a Trans Am. Fellow staffer Pete Pester was behind the wheel of a Mustang 5.0. As soon as we got on the freeway, it was moving very slowly. Friday afternoon commuter traffic meant it was going to be a very long trip to cover the 100 miles back to our office in West Los Angeles. That would be true for normal drivers. We weren't normal. I can't attest to what everyone else did, but more than once I raced down an off-ramp, made it through the green or red light at the bottom of the ramp, swerved and passed cars trying to get on the freeway, and then merged back into freeway lanes with a good lead on the others. The first time I did that, I soon saw the Corvette in my mirror, hauling ass in the breakdown lane. Jim passed me in a flash and showered nearly every car with dirt, dust, and flying debris. The next day, Jim coined the term press lane for the emergency breakdown lane, meaning that it was perfectly okay for a member of the automotive press, like us, to drive in it as fast as possible. And we did it on a daily basis. By the way, we made the 100-mile trip to the office in less than 80 minutes, in heavy traffic all the way. And yes, Jim got there first. One of Jim's favorite stories to tell was when he, Cam, and I were driving in separate cars to the Detroit airport after a Popular Hot Rodding Championships drag race at US 131 Raceway. That's about 150 miles. Dodging, weaving, and sometimes putting wheels into the grass at the center median, it seemed more like the Michigan 500 race to us. Suddenly, the traffic ahead slowed, and we came up behind a 30-mile-per-hour military convoy of nearly 100 vehicles, taking up all lanes. We were already running late, and this delay would probably cause us to miss our flight. I remember Jim honking his horn and flashing his lights, but of course, the convoy isn't going to let us by. Suddenly, I see Jim's test car, a black Buick Grand National, veer off the highway and onto a rest stop. As Cam and I plodded along behind the convoy, Jim roared through the rest stop at 90 miles per hour. How he managed to avoid the many cars, trucks, and people and then get back on the highway in front of the convoy is a testament to Jim's animalistic driving skill. We didn't see Jim again the rest of the trip to the airport. As Cam and I ran to the plane, sweaty and out of breath, Jim was already seated, enjoying the coast. When I plopped down next to him, all he said was, "Oh, I see you're finally here." Then he roared with laughter. His big grin didn't wear off for an hour. Amazingly, in all of our automotive exploits, none of us ever got a ticket or was in a crash or was ever stopped by law enforcement. That has to be some kind of world record. I only worked with Jim for 3 years until Cam defected to run Carcraft magazine and took Jim with him. That put a crimp in Popular Hot Rodding's ability to create the best technical articles. So I left about a year later and worked my way up the ladder to run Motor Trend. Cam did very well at Peterson Publishing as well and soon became the editor of Sports Magazine. Jim eventually was hired away by Edelbrock to work in a specially created job that included parts, engineering, PR, and the dyno room. There he was truly in his element. And he forged more friendships that last through the decades. I'll miss Jim forever, but I won't say rest in peace because I know he will be eternally racing in speed. Love your brother, Tune. So, I'm shop mom. I'm the one who puts up with all these guys and
Thank you.
yeah. Yeah, you're the one that's hardest, right? I think that as we are here today remembering Jim, the thing I'd like you all to take away is who Jim was. One of his last phone calls to me was to ask about my daughter's health. Jim was in hospice care, and Jim wasn't going to be with us for long, but Jim was thinking about somebody else. And there's a moral to that for all of us. And we can choose to be kind. And we should always remember that. The price we pay for love is grief. And while we grieve right now, we celebrate the fact that Jim was here and he was part of us. And we got to be part of him. This is a special group of people. And all of us have suffered loss. And as we go forward, we're going to have more. There will be more, that's for sure. As we just discussed, the Bible says it's appointed to all men to die except for Elijah, who walked with God and was no more. I like to say I watch a lot of Discovery Channel, and that could have been alien abduction, but I digress. Just remember that Jim loves everybody sitting around talking about him. Jim Losey loves the fact that he is the center of attention, holding court once again.
We have two more to read from two more editors. But if somebody else wants to come up between the reading and say anything, about Jim, that you story, anything. If not, we'll go on to the next reading. But this is a good time for someone.
Quick one here.
Yeah, sure.
My name's John Jacobs. My wife Jackie over here is a friend of Jean's from Randolph Brooks. We occasionally went out to dinner together, but he would tell me stories about here and stuff, and it's wonderful to hear some of this other stuff that I didn't know about Jim. And I'm embarrassed to admit almost, but I went Volkswagen for a while, and I wished I was American Muscle, but it was something I got from my dad.
Well, in this group, you would know that there's a couple more of Volkswagen.
Yeah.
You can't like cars and not like Volkswagen.
I've got a 71 Type 3 squareback sitting in the backyard right now that I want to restore, but
Leave it there.
yeah. So is anybody from Valor up in Starksville area? Okay, good. Because one time I was on the phone with Jim, or we were together, and he went into this tirade about, he must have been here, but he went into a tirade about how somebody from Valor up there called him and needed some coaching on how to do some timing. And he couldn't believe it because they were supposed to be motorheads too, or at least they put up the money like they were. But he was real proud of you all and the fact that they called here to find out how to time something up there. So that's all I got.
And as there's another note, when we would have a technical, I've never known anybody who would grab his phone and who he's calling on his phone are their personal numbers to the head of Petronas Ignition or Smitty at Edelbrock. Or if I have a man, I'm working on Edelbrock head, I'm like, look at this. Well, hold on. Well, Smitty, you know, Danny's over here, and then we put him on speakerphone, and his phone, right, Ward? His phone had the private numbers to everybody in the industry until at the end.
Wow.
No matter if there was a problem with the cam from comp or something, well, we're gonna find out. Do you know this is going on in the streets? Kind of. I mean, so he would, and they pick up the phone for Jim. Like I said, when when I was going to SEMA one time, he was gonna make it, and he gave me a list of all of the people to go see. Well, you're gonna go see here, and you're gonna go see. Okay, Jim, I got a lot. So I wrote this list down, and sure, I have to go to these booths, and there are all these people, and I'm going to go see these people, and they're like, one of the examples is Petronas Ignition. You gotta go talk to this guy. I don't even know people's names, I'm like, okay, and I go ask who, and everybody who, I said, no, it's okay, Jim. Anyway, they go get this, and all of a sudden the everything parts, and the owner's sitting there holding court, and and I go sit down, and he is just like, I'm known him forever. Oh, Jimmy's already called me. He's already, because Jim called everybody ahead of time and let know what was happening. And then he's like, you gotta have, these $1,000 buy-ins, and you gotta buy so much from, whatever. And he goes, all that doesn't matter. You're set up. Jim's already said, dude, you're in. And I'm like, he goes, you sell that much? I go, no, Jim's wanting me to, whatever you need. In other words, in every place that we went to, right? I mean, Kirkland was the last time, and we visited with Smitty just before. Yeah. Every place you went to, it wasn't, everybody knows Jim. No, and now the stories more we know is like how in-depth he was in R&D and in the Buick Grand National program. Like one of the early things on them were like, when we hit it off, was I can't go an hour without talking about Smokey Unit. And then it's like, Jim's like, oh, I met Smokey Unit. You did? And it's like, oh yeah, I worked with him when I was at Edelbrock. And it's like, oh my God. And sure enough, Jim brings in pictures, and so yeah, Jim was, but he didn't, you wouldn't, I'm reading, I'm getting these stories now that people are sending. And it's like, damn, Jim, you never, if there was a place to drop, I know this or I know that, never. We never knew, we knew Jim was an editor, but it wasn't like he dropped and told you, what, I know cam timing, or I know ignition timing, but that was just Jim. He would, for the most part, when we first met him, he didn't have patience for two people. He didn't have patience. That's the way. He didn't have patience for anybody that was just, his mind didn't go there. And the first thing I remember, somebody came in when we were talking a few times, and somebody just comes in and then kind of says, oh, I know about that, what we're talking about. And then he had no clue what we're talking about, and Jim just says like this. And he tells me, Danny, I gotta go. And he instantly leaves, and I'm like, okay. And then I realized kind of a little bit, he never was in here when there was people. And he thought he got patience for people. And it's because the same thing, you see a guy, his hands are shaking, he's talking slow, and they just make judgments. So Jim just didn't want to be around people. He wanted to just, I'm done, giving up tools or whatever. And so he became here to where he started to, now he'd go in the back, but then as Roy, we've worked side by side. Was you one of the few that Jim would accept? Was Roy, Ward. These guys here is because Jim just actually accepted them, and it's like, okay, so now we can hang. But Jim worked with me on almost every engine I built in some way. I always, God, Jim, you still got tons in you, not knowing he had more in him than whatever. So he became to where he accepted people. He was like, at the end, he would sit there and talk to you like, nah. But I remember he came in one day right after that, and I go, Jim, what was that about? Because they don't deserve the best, And he goes, how do you get anything done? And how can you stand talking to these idiots? And I go, Jim, those are our customers. Everybody has a different level of, He goes, I need to run the counter and just get rid of all those people. And I go, all right? And I go, Jim, they're customers. We need customers, Jim. And so it took him a while to to accept, you know, answering. At the end, he talked to anybody at the end. He was home here, but he would never be here. When anybody walked in, anybody else, he would leave. He would leave. Very, very few people. Roy is real private. You're back there in the back, but we're working on the Hemi. And Roy didn't kind of like Jim, doesn't have patience for chit chat. He comes in, we're working on his Hemi, and that's what we're going to work on. So it's kind of like the distractions. Roy accepted Jim right early on, and in that back corner, the only one that could be there when I was working on Roy's motor was really Jim. And then next came Ward. And then I kind of feel a little bit the same. You didn't have patience for none. You're just like Jim in that sense. And then all of a sudden, I remember the day, the epiphany of Ward. What do you think? And the same thing with Jim. What do you think? As opposed to, I don't care what you think. It's my engine. But he appreciated Jim. He appreciated our group to the point of, you know, what do you think? And then things have changed a little bit because somebody else has a different opinion. It's like, I kind of like that. So we all grew because of Jim. We all grew because of Jim. But he was very influential in every engine I built here in 10 years. And from the end, the compressed air engine, which is one of the Mickey Thompson built the first one, and we built one of the newest kind of technologies in engines. Jim was influential in that as well. So he still kept building. He loved it, and now I find out more because of other people say, "Oh, he loved it there," but it's because, man, it's, you know, I have a box back there of him writing. I wanted him to keep writing articles, so I thought, you know what, Lewis from Hill Country Car Country Magazine has a little car magazine out here in the Hill Country, and I was trying to get like, man, Jim could still do some technical articles in there. Jim was like, no one wants to do it. I said, Jim, you can talk into the phone. So I was trying to encourage him on early because you got so much to give. And but if you see the 427, that's Jim building that motor. We're building it. He's walking around. His hands were like this when we were working on his engine, or we're working on anything technical, right? I have a box where he wrote on a set of piston rings, Jim Losey. He would only do initials because his hands shook a lot. I should bring his box out right now and just show you his piston rings. This is Jim Losey written right on it. He came just like, you know, I mean, his hands were like this. His hands were like this because he was focused on what we were doing. So.
You remember when we'd be talking about something, and he would call, get some information or something. 3 days later, here comes a box from Edelbrock or whatever. They're sending him stuff. Remember that?
Yeah. Like I said, he would find out he needs something, he'd call. You know, Edelbrock, the intake that was on that Nova was a one-off. That one specifically is a one-off. I'll share that little story real quick, and then somebody else has to say something. But Jim called and had Edelbrock had Smitty send him this rare manifold. So it's the Edelbrock, and it has parentheses E. No one's ever seen one on it. Anybody ever seen one? It's an Edelbrock E. It doesn't, the Edelbrock Performer, not the Edelbrock this. It's Edelbrock E because it's specific to Vic Edelbrocks, and it's one for a big cubic inch motor. So it looks like one of the manifolds, but it's the Edelbrock E in parentheses, E. So Jack's here, one of my guys, we're here, and he says, we need to take a die grinder and take the bottom off that E, and make it an F. And I'm like, why? Because, you know, and he says, because you ain't fucking got one. And I said, we ain't doing that, Jim. This is Jim's manifold. So Jim comes in that day, and we're there, and I said, Jack wants to do something in manifold. We ain't going to do something in manifold, but Jack wants to remove the bottom of the E and make it an F. And he says, why? And I say, you effing got one. And Jim, let's go. And we go to the back, and I etch the bottom out and texture it, and it says it's a one-off Edelbrock F, because you ain't got one. And that's the thing. And on his engine build, it looks like cast aluminum, all those parts on there. Jim, the time that was spent on that motor, and that thing is just one-off engine. All the aluminum pieces had to be powder coated with a dull powder coat. And we got some different powder coats, and we tried different powder coats. Ward was actually one of the first to say the same thing, and you and Ward and Jim were the same. As I don't want it to look shiny, polished. I want it to look like, but I don't want it to oxidize. So we played with different powder coats So those pieces that look like regular aluminum, hours that went into those valve covers and intake manifold to make them look like that. The ARP bolts for the timing cover had these nuts that looked kind of, well, Jim wanted these little star ones on there. So buying these packages, everything on that engine is ARP studded, but even the package comes with this, he wanted a star nut. He didn't, so we buy separate nuts loose and put them on. That engine was really one-off, one-of-a-kind engine. Just it really is an amazing piece of mechanical, that engine. It's just amazing. So that's the way that Jim was. Well, you see that engine. I mean, on the valve covers when we first built it back here, he brought in a shed of Chevrolet rare IndyCar decals that Chevrolet uses for their IndyCar motors. Well, Jim had a pair of them. So Jim says, let's put them on the valve covers. And we did that, but it didn't work out. It didn't had the look for him. So you see at the end, when it's here and we run it, you see them on there, and then you see it the rest of the time, they're not on there. But those were actually a set of Chevrolet when he did something with Chevrolet when they're working with Indy stuff.
Wow.
So, and he said, like, I got a pair of these are all for the Indy program, so a lot of things on that engine, everything. That carburetor is a custom piece that he had made. Pick the phone up, right? Has a carburetor made for him, right? So he comes in and we have it on, and everything else looks at it, and we're gonna chop the air horn off. Well, Jim, that's a $2,000 carburetor, whatever. I mean, yeah. So the picture of him smiling with a cigar in his hand by the mill is because the first picture is actually his carburetor on the mill, and we're cutting the top of this $100 carb, and he's got this grin with his cigar there, just happy. So Jim had a certain way of everything had to be that way. That was just all there was to it.
Hours that he put into deburring that block.
Oh, that did deburn the hour, and we put him a chair and stuff, and he grinded, he deburred. So he didn't just sit there and watch me build it. Had I known, there's not any pictures with me with Jim, when running on there, but I would have taken more pictures of Jim working on the motors. Do you see a lot of them in the pictures that I used, or his arm and stuff? He was here for almost every engine, and on that one specifically was his. But I would have taken even more pictures, knowing one day that I would want Jim, But okay, so now it's who's next to the live stream? Well, we got two more. Let's do them, and we'll wrap up the live stream. For y'all that are watching live, and this is for anybody who is going to be on YouTube, or it's on YouTube right now live. Anybody of his family, friends, everybody can go on. So
one of his nephews actually did just comment.
So one of his nephews is, and anybody's welcome to comment. It's live right now. Well, you can read, so you can read your son comment, tell him mom's here.
Did Ryan?
You can come wave to him. Step. All right, so who's going to read the next one? Is Kirk going to read the next one?
Is that one you want me to read?
Yes, that's from Cam.
No, it's Brian.
He's waiting Brian's. And,
I've got
okay, but
Cam's.
Brian's is yes, you're reading Cam's.
Yeah.
Okay, so whoever wants to go next.
Go ahead.
All right.
All right, you got,
We can make sure that it's
yes.
somewhat in focus. This is gonna be a little bit of a tough one to read, just because.
Of who it is and what.
Oh yeah. But I'm gonna do my best. So, is it good? We good? Good. I met Jim in the garage of Tom Center, my editor-in-chief of Popular Hot Rodding magazine. I recently left Hot Rod magazine in an effort to move up to a magazine where I can move up more quickly in the ranks. So in strolls Jim, in a style that we all know. He was the parts manager at Glendale Chevrolet, and he was a good friend of Tom's. A Saturday afternoon at Tom's was all about Bonneville, filled with stories and audio clips from his last trip to Salts. It was clear right off that Jim did not like me. Later I learned that he was mad about a story I had written for Hot Rod where I revealed just how cool the first-gen Camaros were, which had increased in the selling price of those great cars. I don't really remember the content of our conversations, but clearly we shared an appreciation for 69 C28s. Tom Center soon left PHR for Ford, and due to my seniority, I took over the editorship working with Van Toon, who had come on board slightly after me. Frankly, neither Van or I or Peter had nearly the hands-on knowledge that Jim did. While Jim could really not write, I told him that we needed his knowledge on staff, and we could help him. We could work on the writing. For a number of years, Jim played the sage mechanic role, while the co-editors learned and helped Jim turn his writings into English. It was a real strong team, And we really liked each other as friends and as coworkers. Anytime that Jim and I are mentioned in the same conversation, the story of how I nearly killed him in my 1972 Camaro always seems to come up. This crazy F-body was originally built by Dick Gullstrand, I'm not sure if that's spelled right, and Traco Racing Engines in Culver City. For those not familiar with either group, Goldstrand was a legendary Chevy racer with a suspension company, and Traco was the premier Trans Am Camaro builder for the Donahue Camaros, just to hit the highlight. The Camaro, later called Garfield after I repainted it Hugger Orange for the magazine, was really fast, built for the guy who played the original Billy Jack in the movies. It ran on widened rally wheels with Firestone rain race tires, four-wheel discs, and Doug Nash 5-speed. Back in 1983, that was some advanced stuff. Well, I bothered Dick for about a year before he finally got hold of the owner and received the green light to sell it. Total price, $3,500 bucks. Man, those were the days. So with pink slip in hand, Jim and Van decided to have a test run in the Camaro before even registering the car. We headed out to the San Fernando Valley. Van in the chase car, an infamous Audi 5000, and drove it through Simi Valley. Our target, Mulholland Highway. Does anyone else know the story? I feel like even I've heard.
I've heard it.
Okay.
It's pretty cool though.
Yeah. With Jim in the co-pilot seat, we drove out to Moore Park on a wide and slow rolling street called Tierra Rijada. Like the yellow Camaro in Gumball Rally, I had put 130 miles per hour on the speedometer on the tens digit in the odometer. We later figured by RPM and tire height that we topped 152 miles an hour, and it still indicated only 5,800 RPM. After the second run, we slowed down to wait for Van and the Audi and pointed south to Westlake, to Mulholland, and Malibu. It was dark and the time was around 10:30 p.m. I turned off of Mulholland onto Decker Canyon Boulevard, not driving hard, but just staying up with Van and the Audi. On a fateful corner, there were pebbles on the surface, and the corner of Garfield's first legendary store came to be. The Camaro drove straight off the corner and down the cliff, stopping about 20 feet down, caught on some piling built into the cliff to help keep the road in place. As soon as the car stopped, Jim and I bailed, Jim beating me to the top of the hill. That's the fastest I've ever seen him move in my life. To cut to the chase, the tow truck driver bungled the Camaro. Did something to the Camaro. Basically botched the retrieval of the Camaro, and the driverless car drove to the bottom of the canyon when the cable snapped. It was not until the next day, with 2 trucks and 4 sets of cables, that the Camaro was back in the road. 3 months later, I had the car back together, most of the damage to the front sheet metal and to my ego. Most of the damage, was to the front sheet metal and to his ego. Jim is a great guy, and I miss him greatly. If the trait of a good boss is to surround yourself with great talent, then I succeeded when I hired him both at CarCraft and PHR. But to me, Jim was far more than just a worker. He was one of my very, very best friends. We always had a good time together, and over the last 5 years, I came to San Antonio for work, annually spending a dinner with he and Jeannie. We talked regularly over the phone and kept each other close, and for that I will always be thankful. Rest well, my friend, and in last time, hey Q-Ball, let the guys in Kelly's Pool Hall know I'm thinking of them.
Yes, please. See, the juices are flowing now. And then I'm going to read while Jim was my uncle, and everybody in the shop knows him. Jim Losi was one that, I'm not the one to be reading this stuff, right? Jim Losi knows him. Jim Losi was one, then enough. You all felt the love, I'm sure, and thank you for being there, the extended Texas family, especially Dan and Kurt. And that is from his nephew. So, is that anybody willing to just to type anything in there? Rick Love is now going to say something. And
I'm Rick Love. Don't know me, I'm with Vintage Air, and I got to tell you just a quick story of one of the first times that I spent a little time with Jim. When I first started full-time for Vintage Air, we were doing the old hot rod power tours, but they were the long power tours. We went from LA, Jeannie, you remember that, we went from LA to Detroit, and I mean, you'd go 300, 400, 500 miles in a day. and you still had to be there to set up your booth when you got there. And Jim was working for Edelbrock then, and he always called him Victor. He had never called him Vic. It was always Victor, right? It was always Victor with him. And Victor had a new 40 Ford built by Roy Brizio, high dollar car. It was a 40 Ford coupe, really nice car. And Victor spent a lot of money on it, getting it done. And Jim was driving that, and I was driving the El Camino that we had, and we were kind of running together. And with the stories you've heard about how Jim's driving was, that's how it was on the road for these power tours too. We had a lot of miles to cover, and they were covered in a hurry. And I was a lot younger then, and a lot of these guys were my hot rod heroes, and we got to one of these stops, and we got to go to dinner with Vic. And boy, that was a big deal for me to go to dinner with Vic Edelbrock. And we're sitting there with the dinner, and Jim's there, and Vic was kind of talking small talk, and he kind of starts to me, he says, now, how's Jim doing with my brand new hot rod? Is he taking good care of it out on the road? And man, I didn't know what to say. And everybody knows Jim's looks with his smile and stuff. He kind of turns with that smile and raises his eyebrows at me. I said, oh, I said, Mr. Elbrock, man, he's taking good care of that car. He's driving it like it was his own. And, and Vic turns, he goes, that's what I was afraid of. And it was kind of the end of the conversation on his car then. But it was, man, we had some good times on those power tours. And that's the way he was. And the surprising thing was, he was hired in a public relations job at Edelbrock. And y'all know how he was with some people, like you say, he didn't suffer fools well.
No.
And man, a couple of those stops, I saw some of those. He didn't always get to talk to people at power tours after that, but that was a good story with Jim and Victor on that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I guess it's gonna be Kirk. I had here, that reminded me of a story that Jim had, and then like that quick it was gone. So Kirk, you're gonna do. You're gonna do as big as you like. There you go. And this is from Cam.
Oh, this is Cam?
That's Cam,
No,
right? No, I'm
no.
sorry. I don't know who this is from.
Brian.
This is from Brian.
Brian.
So don't, once
Don't
again.
listen to Danny.
Yeah, anybody on my live streams know, don't ask me for dates, times, or names of people, but I can build an engine.
Here we go. I met Jim in the garage, Tom Center, my editor-in-chief of Popular Hot Rodding magazine. I had recently left Hot Rod magazine in an effort to move to a magazine where I could move up more quickly in the ranks.
No, that's
Different
the
one.
That's the wrong one.
Yeah, it is.
That's
It's
the
one
wrong.
you
That's
read.
no, that's not the one.
I'm not responsible for that one, but I remembered the one of Jim pulls up in this, I think it was a Z06, it was this awesome Camaro. So Jim
Yes,
pulls up in this
it was.
awesome Camaro, and he comes in and revs it up. So he comes in, and I'm like, Jim, since the time we know Jim, he had many cars. The Monte Carlo, the new Challenger, which within about 30 days, every manufacturer sent him everything. This thing had Flowmaster exhaust. This thing had cutouts for the disc brakes for the air. And then it's like 3 months later, what's that car? Oh, I got, And then he had more. He built more cars in the last 10 years that I've known him. But he pulls up in this awesome Camaro. So come on, you got to see this. I go out there and it's like, oh, dang, this is the new LS. This is the 427 dry sump motor. What is this? He goes, well, I get to put 1,000 miles on it. I think it was for Jack. It was Jack's car, and it had to do the break-in. Who would give Jim a car to do a break-in in? So this was a brand new Camaro that he had to put 1,000 or however many miles before Jack could race it. So it had to be broken in. This was. It was a Z28. It was the LS. Was it the 427? It was the.
Yeah, it was the LS3.
LS3. It was a dry
brakes and everything.
Oh my head! Like I said, yeah, carbon ceramic brake. This thing was an amazing piece, and it's like, he goes, yeah, I just can't, rev it up over this RPM, and I can't. And then of course, as Jim left, it's like he had to have already broken the warranty after he left. But Jack had him drive it around to put miles on it before he could race it. So that's another story of the things that Jim did.
Okay, this is from Brian H. Here's what I got for you. Not sure if it's what you're looking for. Feel free to use it or not. I spent a lot of time with Jim during our CarCraft days, and for some reason, I remember this incident. Probably the main reason why I love working with Jim Losey on the staff of CarCraft is because we had so much in common. from the types of cars that we own to the places around LA where we used to race or cruise, and just be able to sit down and talk about our assignments or just shoot the breeze. We were more than just work associates, we were friends. One of the perks of working for a magazine like Carcraft was being able to build project cars and engines. Like a good tech editor, Jim would always have cool stuff in the works. Sometimes it was a big inch, big block making loads of torque. Sometimes it was a high revving small block. I remember one car in particular that he built back then. It was a Chevy Impala that he was turning into an undercover police car clone. I don't recall what was under the hood, but I remember Jim wanting to get what was called a wigwag module, a small electronic device that only police cars had that would make the headlights flash left, right, whenever they're on a call. We were probably talking about it over lunch. We frequently went out to lunch together, and I told him that my dad worked in the LAPD garage and I would see if I could get one. That night I told my dad about Jim's build, and he thought it was such a cool project since he worked on police cars. Sure enough, my dad brought a wigwag unit home for me that weekend. Jim called and I told him I got it and would bring it to the office on Monday, but he couldn't wait. He said he'd come over to my house and pick it up. I told him I'd be out in the garage changing the oil on my Trans Am. I had just pulled the drain plug when Jim showed up in his flamed Beltec drop Chevy truck, another magazine project. I heard him winding out first gear as he pulled in up in front of my house. I rolled out from under the car to give Jim the wigwag, and as I walked over to him, I noticed him kind of laughing and looking at my car at that chance. I told him I was changing the oil. He said, "Yeah, I can see that." Then he nodded his head towards my car and asked, "Do you always just dump your oil in a driveway like that?" I turned around, and to my horror, I saw a huge oil slick in my driveway. I remember the time I was really embarrassed. I changed oil countless times, but on this occasion, I had the drain plug partially on one of the wheels of the floor jack, and when the oil started draining, the drain pan slid off the wheel over to one side and allowed a stream of dirty oil to pour out. Of course, Jim had a field day with that, and I'm just glad he didn't have his camera with him. We had a good laugh. Before he left, he asked if I didn't need any help changing the oil. It was the way he said it that was classic Jim Losley, being funny and kind of a wise guy at the same time. So,
Yeah, well, and Brian, that's from Brian, and Brian built, I got the right name, Brian built the cars, not the movie cars, but when the production company wanted cars to show whatever, he did that. He did the A-Team, the van of the A-Team, a bunch of historic movie cars, besides a great writer for motorcycles and technical. So another, influential, these stories are coming from people that like I said, it's like, Jim, you didn't tell us these stories, We have our own, we have our own, and we heard a lot of stories, so.
When I did his car, we pulled the manual transmission out, converted it all the way back over to automatic. So he wanted it to be able to use the column shift, it's kind of a stealth thing, keep his bench seats, which he loved. So anyway, I got into adjustment. He likes to shift it manually, though. He didn't really want to be in automatic mode. He wants to bang through the gears, Well, the column would need to be modified to do that because you couldn't quite get it in the first gear. So he said, let's put a floor shifter in there. I said, okay. So he bought this floor shifter. So I put it in there, and it was more of a street rod style floor shifter. Everybody knows, kind of a long stock, and he says, "I hate this thing." So I said, "Okay." She says, I got another shifter coming." I said, "Okay." So I pulled that thing out, and he probably threw it away. Put another shifter in there. We got to go, and he goes, "I hate this thing." And I said, "Okay." I said, "I think I know the shifter that you might want." Because my brother happened to have a shifter that he took out. He hated it, but I think Jim would like it. So I took it in there, and he played with it. He goes, "That's what I want." I said, "Okay." So I pulled that shifter out, stuck that shifter in, and he was happy. So
Jim did right. Anything out of a box, it wasn't. Those heads those are custom AFR heads, CNC ported, specific for his engine. And then we tear them apart, and then we changed to beehive springs, and we changed to. There was nothing that we fit right in. I mean, we were just. But he was a little more. Like I said, he'll go through 3 or 4 shifters. He'd go through no, I don't like it, or it wasn't right. It had to be exactly the way he wanted it,
Sure.
which was badass.
Oh no,
But,
I understand.
you know, who puts ARP studs on everything on the motor, the oil pan, everything, and then it had to be the stainless one. And oh, that timing cover, I want to make sure, Smitty and Jim, that's their timing cover.
Oh really?
So Smitty, you have to go back and look at the we met Smitty a long time ago, and he was just like a bud because of Jim. That's the thing with Jim is like, we
All
got
his friends were your friends.
Yeah,
Because
it's,
they figured if he put up with you, you're a good guy, and he'll put up
and
with
it makes
you,
sense
you know?
when I heard Jim say talk about us, right? He put a speakerphone.
Oh,
all
yeah.
of a sudden, the doors were just open to anything you wanted, and it was like, well, now we understand why he was, you know, and he would just anything, but it wasn't out of a box. Whatever it was, it had to fit. If it took the 3 parts and take one part of this one part of this one, and one part of this one, and then it was like that was it. So it's very very opinionated.
Oh, yeah.
Very opinionated. Like I said, and Kirk did. All of the buds here. Like everybody can say a story of what they did for Jim. I don't think we did it for Jim. I think everybody was doing for what we would do to anybody else. But you did so much. Besides, at the end, the health stuff, bringing him because Jim wanted to be here, but he couldn't no longer drive, or he couldn't no longer. Kirk would pick him up and bring him just so that he could be here for a little while, and then do it. So and all the stuff in the car.
Oh yeah.
It has to be standard and it had to be automatic. And
We fixed the starting problem because Jeff had a similar situation with his car, and there was no power in the start position intermittently. So sometimes the car would bust right off, and sometimes it wouldn't. So I fixed Jim's car, then we worked on Jeff's car and got it going the same thing.
The same, yes.
Yeah, it was the
So
same thing.
yes. So on Jim didn't want exhaust hanging on a car, but Jim wanted 3-inch pipes. How do you put 3-inch pipes on a Nova and not see a pipe? It's unheard of. You can't do it. It got done. Kirk made it happen. And to make this happen, Jim wanted the biggest muffler, this 3-chamber 4. I don't know what. He called up and the Flowmaster sending him mufflers. So Kirk cut the floor, pull the rear seat out, the floor, and tucked the exhaust up in there. You couldn't see nothing. The exhaust went in the back seat. And then Kirk cut it all, put it back, welded it, grounded it, and you looked original. It may be a little warm back there. They put Dynamat back there, like Jim said. Ain't gonna nobody be in my back seat. But it had Dynamat and the rear seat back in. But if you would never know, one day they're gonna pull that the carpet back, and they're gonna just go, man, somebody really raised that up, and the seat still fits, and the exhaust is tucked all the way under. So the Krager wheels. You can't put a big wheel under a Nova. You can't put any kind of motor in a Nova because it's so light and there's no tire underneath it. Jim bought more than one set of rims. Jeannie probably going, I know. And then sent them out to his buddies and come. I'm saying use the wheels, and they cut them and they welded 2 sets of rims to have the right offset that he needed. From the side view, it looks like a Nova. That's Jim smiling when we were cutting his carburetor. And from the side, it looks like it has little bitty skinny tires. It ran a 10, 50, whatever, and that's on the street tires. Of course, he had Mickey Thompson Street Masters, but you can't put a big tire in a Nova. So to run 10 seconds in a street Nova, just drive it to the track and run 10 is an amazing. That car had tons more power in it. We used a smaller cam than anybody would have used because Jim knew. Me and Jim, from very on. Me and Jim in the back porting cylinder heads, and we'd say, Danny, what would Mr. Air do? So anytime it came with anything else, and y'all can all use this, what would Mr. Air do? Mr. Air doesn't like to do turns. So if you're gonna do a turn, make it gradual. Don't do a 90-degree turn, because Mr. Air doesn't like to do a turn. So he's always would use that. What would Mr. Air do? So right, when you're looking at anything, what would you say? Can I?
If I could, what did he say? If I could offer 1 or 2 suggestions.
That's what it is. You can't hear. He would always say, "Yeah, if I could
make a suggestion."
If I could make a suggestion, that was it. So whatever was going on, he would listen, and if I could make a suggestion, And of course, and he always had. But that was one.
Well, so Justice probably cost me $5 grand.
Yes. But Jim,
But the car runs.
you right? You can't unlearn something. You know, knowledge is not bad. It's not, you know, you might not like it, you might like what you hear, but yes. When Jim, like I said, when I talk a lot. When Jim was here, I listened a lot. I write notes. You know. Okay, I think we've read the stuff. For the people that are still live, thank you for being here. Like I said, if I missed somebody, you know why we missed somebody, because this is live. We appreciate everybody that's live. They're leaving comments. And then this will stay on. We'll leave it on so anybody can go on. And if you didn't watch the video just before this, it's going to stay on there too. It's his tribute video. You can watch it with nobody talking and just in your home by yourself. Anybody else have anything to say about Jim? I think we're, you know, a lot of people may be shy. So anyway, thanks y'all for being here. Goodbye. And you know what we say? Peace and assembly grease to everybody. If I knew how to turn it off from over here, but that's what we say. Peace and assembly grease.